It's a huge pleasure to introduce today Professor Richard Andersen. He's the James G. Boswell Professor of Neuroscience at Caltech, as well as the director of the Tang Kao and Chrissy Chen Brain-Machine Interface Center. So Richard has been a faculty member first at Salk and then at MIT for many years, and then he's been out at Caltech since 1994. So he's made any number of absolutely fundamental and classic discoveries about the coding of spatial information in the brain and action planning. He discovered the parietal reach region in monkeys, a region engaged in making reach plans. He demonstrated famously that area LIP in the parietal cortex is involved in motor intention, not just attention, by showing that the cells there were selective for whether the plan was to move the eyes or to make a reach movement, even when the location of the attended object was held constant. And in one of his absolutely classic findings, that was decades ahead of its time, he showed way back in the 1980s these gain fields in area 7A of the parietal lobe that solve a big part of this problem of how we deal with the fact that vision comes in retinotopic coordinates on the retina, but action is in world coordinates, and so how do we transform those spatial coordinates? Richard showed these gain field cells that have retinotopic receptive fields, but multiplied by a gain that codes eye position in world coordinates. So that was pretty cool. But even more cool was that he and Zipser trained a simple artificial neural network, simple 3-layer network, to transform between retinal coordinates with an eye position signal to world locations, and showed that those networks, once they accomplished the task, showed the very same kind of gain fields that had been observed in the brain. And this kind of convergence between what artificial neural networks just trained to do a task do and what the brain does is something many of us in this field are all excited about recently, but he was doing it 30 years before the rest of us. So hats off to Richard. So more recently, Richard has been launching this incredible line of research where he is studying paralyzed patients who can't move. He's designing brain-machine interfaces that will someday enable them to control robotic prostheses and arms. And this is just incredibly thrilling to me for two different reasons. One is an emotional reason. When I was 15, I jumped off a friend's shoulders in water that was not deep enough, shattered 3 vertebrae in my neck, and was tetraplegic underwater. As you can see, I recovered, but not until I spent a week or two contemplating life without being able to move. That was not for me. And so for lots of people, I think this is a potentially incredibly life-changing enterprise that Richard's embarked on. But the second reason, the more scientific reason, is that I think many of us in human cognitive neuroscience feel that we're bumping into walls in our ability to answer the next level of questions, like what exactly are the computations in parts of the brain? How do they change over time? What is their causal role in behavior? And how does information move around between regions in the brain? And these are all things that are really hard to answer with current methods, but Richard has the most amazing methods that I think will be enable us to tackle all of those. So I will stop now and turn over the Richard.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Nancy, for that really nice introduction. And it's great to be here at one of my old home schools and to go around and see many old friends and as well as meet new people. So today, as Nancy mentioned, I'll be talking about neural prosthetics. And I will actually show a couple of new things that we've been doing. I guess in part, you may not have seen the old things, but in part, you get bored after a while of talking about the same things. And so hopefully you won't mind being guinea pigs for this current talk. One of my friends said that this is why they weren't worried about the singularity. Okay, well, I can do it from here because I think there's no clicker, right? Yeah. So what we do is we record neurons from parts of the cerebral cortex, and then we decode the meaning of those patterns of activity, and we use it to control external devices. And we refer to the recordings as reading out the signals, and then we also electrically stimulate in the brain to provide feedback because these patients have lost the sense of the feeling of their body. So right now there are about 500,000 people paralyzed per year as a result of spinal cord damage. And, oh, it's working now. Okay. And they usually about half have high cervical cord or lesions. And so as Nancy was mentioning, her vertebrae were up in the higher level, and that renders tetraplegia, which is the inability to move either arm or either leg, as well as losing all sensation below the level of the lesion. And as you can imagine, often these subjects have their lesions or their accidents early in life when they're maybe not so careful, and they live for a long time though, and they need constant caregiver assistance. So this is also turns out to be a very expensive type of medical assistance. So these are the real heroes for us for these experiments. These are subjects that have participated in our research, and usually in these studies they enroll in a clinical study, and they've typically gone from 5 to 10 years. So we were very surprised that the technology, the electrode arrays that we use, which only lasted about a year in monkeys, lasted much longer in the human subjects. And they are heroes because they're doing this work to not for their own good or being able to have some kind of treatment, but rather for participating in trials for scientific discoveries to help subsequent subjects. And so this is the basic problem that happens with spinal cord lesion. Normally, when you want to, say, look to grasp an object, you see it, it passes through the spinal cord. Well, you see the object that passes through the cortex, then down the spinal cord, activating the muscles in the limb. However, when there's a lesion to the spinal cord, it breaks the circuit, but the subjects can still think about moving. So we implant arrays of electrodes, and we record what they want to do. And this shows we use what's called the Utah array. It has 96 recording electrodes. It's like a little bed of nails. And what's interesting is it's very small, but 4 by 4 millimeters, and yet we can get a lot of information with such a small implant. And this kind of shows an example of a neuron firing, which is being highlighted there amongst the set of neurons that we look at on a computer screen. Now, also I mentioned that the subjects lose the ability for sensation below the level of the lesion. And so it's very difficult to manipulate an object if you can't actually touch it. You can see it to grasp it, but to manipulate it is really difficult. So we put sensors in the robotic limbs, and then we can stimulate to provide sensory feedback into somatosensory cortex. And so the places that I'll be talking about today are motor cortex. That's important for the trajectory of executed movements. We'll also be looking at somatosensory cortex. That's the area that's important for the sensation of touch. And the posterior parietal cortex, a place dear to my heart that I've studied many years, that's important for high-level sensorimotor integration. And other labs primarily have studied the motor cortex, and this makes a lot of sense because this is the outflow of the signal to command movements. The somatosensory cortex, we do intracortical microstimulation through these electrode arrays to provide the sense of perception. And in the posterior parietal cortex, as I mentioned, this is the area that we've focused on for a number of years. And the posterior parietal is an association area, and so it has connections with many different cortical areas. And through the years, from patient studies with lesions and recording experiments in non-human primates, it's been shown to be involved in action planning, visual processes like attention, grasping and reach, eye movements, decision-making, tactile sensations, language processes, and navigation, and even more. And the surprising thing for us was that with these tiny implants, we could decode many of these different functions. So that had to do with the fact that there's a mixed selectivity in which a single neuron will be a part of more than one circuit. So it'll be activated by different aspects of a task or a stimulus. So the talk today, I'll first talk about some science. And the idea there, of course, is to find new science that we can apply then to designing neural prosthetics. And one really important aspect of working with humans is you can ask them what they perceive, and also how they go about doing a task, what they are doing, where it's often with the monkey research that we've done, you often wonder what the monkey is actually perceiving or actually how he's going about to solve the problem. And we'll discuss awareness of intent, somatosensory perception, somatosensory and visual integration, internal speech, and action observation. And I thought I'd also then mention a new application that we've been doing. This is driving a commercial vehicle with a brain-machine interface. And again, actually, when they first approached me about it, I thought, well, that seems a little crazy. But it is informative in the extent that it shows that BMIs can be used in the environment, in a natural situation. So that it's not in a laboratory environment that most BMI research is conducted. And then also it requires bimanual control. So in this case, it'll be steering, acceleration, and braking. So in terms of, we wanted to see if there was awareness of intent of movement plans. And so one reason we thought that was interesting is that when the subjects do these various tasks, like here Eric is moving the robotic limb to the square and moving the circle, and you can see that he's talking to the therapist. Well, they're having a nice discussion. So he's doing this pretty much automatically. He's not really having to use a lot of conscious effort to do the task. And another subject, Nancy, she had played piano before lesion. So here she's playing a computer piano. And her observation was that is that she didn't feel like she was actually hitting the keys. So it's a little like when you're typing. So you don't actually think so much about moving your individual fingers, but rather what the words are that you're producing. So there was a famous experiment by Ben Livett. He looked at the awareness of intent, and he found that there was, he recorded the EEG, and he recorded what was called a readiness potential. And that potential, he asked the subjects to make a flexion movement and to do it more or less randomly. And there was a clock going, and he'd say to then report when you were aware of your intention to make the movement. So what he found was the awareness appeared long into the readiness potential, here's the action. So the conclusion from his study by him was that we're not actually aware of our plans to make movements, that they come kind of as an afterthought. So this generated a lot of interest, also controversy. So we decided to redo the limit experiment, but now with single neurons from posterior parietal cortex. And so again, we're using the same sort of paradigm, but we're asking the subjects, or the subject in this case, to say when they experience this clock, and that's not part of the video. So this is kind of just a demonstration reporting now when they thought the actual action happened. And from the single neurons, in this case, there were two actions. One was to a shoulder shrug, and the other was an attempted hand movement. The subject is paralyzed. And these show examples of 3 different neurons, and you can see that some respond to one plan better than the other, and in this case, they're actually active before the awareness, similar with this one, not so much with that one. This is a demixed principal components, and you can see that there's a timing component, and then a second one which explains a large bit of the variance, which separates for the 2 different motor plans and long before the awareness of the intent. So we would say then that the posterior parietal cortex, although it's making all these plans, are making it at a subconscious level. So people are not at least aware of what they're planning to do. Now, we also, in these studies, look at...
Yeah. Awareness signal? I didn't quite understand.
Oh, yeah. So they were asked to randomly move their hand, but they then report when they thought they were aware that they were moving it, that they gave the command to move it, not that they necessarily felt it. And what they found was that about a few hundred milliseconds before the awareness, there was already motor processing occurring in the cortex. Now, this was EEG recorded from the frontal lobe, but here now we have an implant with single neurons, and we see the same thing, and in fact, with two different types of tasks. In that case, these are shoulder movement or an attempted hand movement, and the activity is already building up as a motor plan before the subject is aware of it. And the trick is that they register the awareness on this clock. And so they make the movement, but then they're asked to where to put the clock, and it's usually before the awareness follows the actual movement of the subject.
So they say where the dot was when they felt they...
Yeah, that exactly, yeah. So, like I say, it's an interesting experiment. I suppose it's controversial because it's in a limited context. So, likewise, here we're looking at it in a limited context. I think when I went to get on the plane yesterday, probably I had made a plan a day before to do it. And so it's likely that in that case, the planning, these other kind of high-level plans probably precede what these very short-term motor plans are in terms of awareness. That hasn't stopped people from arguing that, for instance, law is all about intent. So if you murdered someone, of course, you weren't aware of it. That you just implicitly did it. But, that's kind of a debate people love to have in journals. I think people, they would still be guilty. So in our experiments, we put implants up to 5 or 6 places in the cortex because initially we wanted to look at grasping. So we wanted to follow the entire grasp circuit. And so the implants are within posterior parietal cortex in an area called AIP, which is grasp area. Another, the supramarginal gyrus, which also showed activity in fMRI for grasping. Somatosensory cortex, in which we can record and also we stimulate. Motor cortex, and recently in dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, we've also made 3 implants in premotor ventral cortex. And so what we hope to do here is get at the whole circuit for planning grasping. And so first to look at or stimulation, where we write in the sense of sensation. What was surprising was that the sensations were very natural. So this is a word cloud, showing the descriptions of one of the subjects. And if you, on the other hand, stimulate a nerve, it feels very unnatural. So these microstimulations in somatosensory cortex produced a natural-like sensation. So we wanted to ask if the sensation is coming from somatosensory cortex or perhaps along the pathway, for instance, posterior parietal cortex. We thought this might be interesting because with decoding with our recordings, we found that if we asked subjects to imagine the different sensations, in this case, blowing, right movement, vibration, squeeze, or tap, that we could easily decode those sensations that they were imagining, but not so much from somatosensory cortex. So this suggested that perception was arising more so in posterior parietal. And here's an example of one neuron that's tuned to these imagined sensations. So one experiment we did was to produce a vibration stimulus to subjects that had some sensation still in their upper limb. And these vibrations were, so there was a variable delay, then a stimulus for 1 second, and another delay, and then they report what they felt. And we used a 3 down, 1 up psychometric function to determine where they were near threshold. So what I'll show you is when they just are at the threshold for feeling it. And so this raster diagram here shows, and these are from 3 participants, so we've concatenated them. And this is when they felt it and when they didn't feel it. You can see that in S1, there's activity even when the stimulus is not felt. In the others, more or less, there's no activity when they didn't feel it, only activity when they did. But I think what amazed me was that even for a near threshold stimulus, of course, the subject has to respond, but it activated pretty much all these cortical areas. So it produces a cortical-wide activation. And just to pull out some of this information, the other 2 participants were very similar, but this is participant 2. And you can see there was recordings from felt and unfelt from somatosensory and SMG. And in somatosensory cortex, when they didn't feel it, there was still activity, whereas in SMG, there wasn't activity if they didn't feel it. Likewise, if we look at this choice probability, we find this is a measure of the fidelity of a signal. We find that, again, somatosensory cortex has a higher choice probability. I'm sorry, SMG has a higher choice probability than somatosensory cortex. And this is a time series just following the choice probability first from S1 and then from supplementary, supramarginal gyrus. And you can see that supramarginal gyrus follows because it's further in the chain, but again, has a higher choice probability. And then finally, just to look at here, these are neuron dropping curves looking at the accuracy. And again, S1 is more sensitive, less sensitive than the supramarginal gyrus. So concluding from this, it appears that the posterior parietal cortex is more sensitive to the actual percept of the stimulus than is S1. And now, all these arrays that I showed you that we put in, we can also stimulate through them. So we haven't stimulated so far many of them, but we have in posterior parietal cortex, this is in AIP, and we do get reports, sensory reports, and they're near threshold, so some are very low threshold, and but they're strange. They're probably sensations that no one else has ever felt. So they say that it was not at all like a sensory percept. It was instead like suddenly experiencing a different state of awareness about the hand area. or a feeling of intention, but I can't determine the action, more of an intention to feel something than to move. So another experiment we did was to look at the integration of touch with vision. And so in this case, the subject is looking in a virtual reality, and we stimulate and produce a what we call a projection field. So when they stimulate, the projection field might be on the tip of a finger. Then we provide a spot on the finger, and we see how that spot then would influence the projection field when the two are integrated together. And what we find is a couple of examples. In this case, this number of times the subject reported a projection field. It was predominantly at the tip of the index finger. Then the spot was flashed at a location lower on the index finger, and now the reporting went toward that lower location, and this is the difference here. And this one, different subject, the index finger is, again, the most common. Here at the palm, at the base of the index finger, the dot appears, and you can see that the response projection field moves down, and again, this is the difference. And this has been a very consistent finding. So this suggests that at some point, we're looking at the somatosensory information getting integrated with visual information. Of course, now we can record from all these areas, so we can get a good idea of where it happens. Another aspect of recording from posterior parietal cortex is that we found activity related to speech, and then looking more closely, we found it even for internal speech. So this is recording again from the supramarginal gyrus, and the decoding of internal speech signals. So this would be good if someone is locked in. So that means that they can't move at all. It comes from a stroke or ALS. But if you could record that kind of internal dialogue that you have with yourself, maybe that could be used for prosthetic applications. And it's interesting that not everyone has this internal dialogue. How many of you have it? Okay, I always do this. So I'd say 80-20, right? And
explain what that means exactly.
oh, so yeah, if you don't have it, you probably don't know. Yeah. Well, to use me as an example, when I wake up in the morning, I start talking to myself. I know it sounds crazy, but you have this dialogue with yourself, and it's been. Are you, Michael, familiar with that?
I can do that. I don't usually.
I see. Usually pure thought. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, the graduate student that worked on this couldn't do it. It didn't have it. So that was kind of interesting. So we think it's internal speech, so we did a number of controls, including having implants in areas around the articulators that weren't active for the internal speech. And however, we don't think we're actually looking at someone's internal thoughts because we've asked the subject to participate within this trial and to produce the internal speech. So the task is there is a stimulus, which is a written word. They read it. They speak the word internally. And then we decode the word and we give them feedback. And the vocabulary is 6 lexical words and 2 pseudo words. So here's the subject doing this task. And so the first one here he's going to get wrong. But after that, he then gets 31 correct in a row. So of course, I'm showing the best, but it's been consistent over more than in 2 subjects so far. Okay. So now I'd like to talk about our experiments on social observation. So you'll see here that this is Nancy. Deborah will stroke her chin, which will produce activations because she has feeling in her chin. Carrie will then stroke Tyson's chin, and you'll hear that the cell is active. And if they look at the cheek, there's no activity. So it seems to be something sort of mirrored for that particular location on the body. So here you hear the activity. And not so much for the cheeks. And so now Nancy closes her eyes, so it's not visual. So it's somatosensory, and it still activates the neurons, and not cheek, the cheek. So this is a little like a sensory version of a mirror neuron. So a mirror neuron is when you see someone's action, or you do the action, it's active in those 2 cases. This is more like a sensory version. So she's inferring what the other person feels at that location congruent to the chin. And so we looked a little deeper. In this case, we have 2 persons, the actual person, the observed person, 2 body parts, so it's the cheek and the shoulder. And we have 4 touch types. And so looking deeper, we find that, yikes, it's very, very mixed. That there's some cells that, for instance, this one here is only for actual different actions. This cell is active for all of the different possibilities of observed and actual, and this unit only for observed cheek. And so at the single cell level, as we looked more deeply, it was a much more complicated story. So we fell back to analyze based on Josh Tenenbaum's work on compositionality. So the idea here is that you have modules that you can, meaning that you can put together. So if you have a bald, the meaning of bald and the meaning of man, you could put those together and have the meaning of a bald man. So this reduces or produces a nice way of building up a large number of different representations. So this is again, a demixed PCA, and what we found is that there is a decodable activity for body part, also for touch type, and for person. So this suggests, even though there's this mixed representation, that over the population you actually have these different building blocks. So finally, I'd just like to end with the driving experiment. And actually, maybe it's just because I live in LA, but paralyzed people tell me they would actually like to drive. Actually, a number of partially paralyzed people do drive. And so from my point of view, this was nice because we could do something that was in the real world. So this will be actually driving a commercial vehicle on a street. And also, it has bimanual control. So the subject can control both speed and steering, as well as braking. So the first question is how fast and how accurate can our implant subject be at these, just for these driving tasks. And so this part was done in the laboratory, and this is with a simulator called a Carla, which is very typical for people working in the automotive industry. And what happens here is an object suddenly appears, there's a vending machine, and the subject has to apply a brake. So a simple reaction time task. This is our subject here. His reaction time is, the green box is all those that are significantly different from all these other 20 control subjects that are intact. And only one control subject was not significantly different from our subject. So this means that he can react incredibly fast. On the other hand, his accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity are very high, as well as it is for the 20 intact subjects. And then with showing you the sequence of the analysis, we record the activity, we record spikes, as well as local fields, and we extract features for braking, steering, and acceleration. That's then fed to a display, which you'll see. It's visible to the subject, indicating the direction of steering and the acceleration. And then what I'll show you next is using this Carla simulation, comparing how well our subject does compared to intact subjects. So in this case, there's the driving. He's bimanual task. It's busy traffic with lights, curves, lane changes, and left and right turns. And our subject, James, is on the left, and a motor intact individual on the right. And you can see that they're both doing a pretty good job of this. And the reason it looks dark there is this is simulating urban driving, so that's the shadow from the buildings. So from this, the Carla returns the score, and James' score was similar to 19 of the 20 intacts, and only significantly better than one of them. So we can conclude that James is as good as the intact individuals in controlling in a virtual environment. So now the next thing we did, this is a collaboration with BlackRock, which is a neurotech company, and with Ford Motor Company, is to actually control a vehicle. And this vehicle is being controlled through the internet with James in California, controlling over the internet. First, he controls the car, but there's video feedback for him coming back. So there's a bit of a delay here, about 600 milliseconds, 200 in this direction, 400 going back. So the speed is not that fast. But it's, in this case, they have, Ford has this facility called M-City, which is a urban environment, and he'll be controlling a Ford Mustang Mach-E vehicle, and he'll be turning at intersections, roundabouts, U-turns, lane mergers, and there are no driving infractions, so he can go through red lights. Yeah, fun, huh? So this shows the track. You'll see a video now of him driving on this track. This is the car filmed from outside. Okay, and this next one is a obstacle course that they put out. So this, again, in this case, we add braking to it, so he can also not only steer and control speed, but also brake the vehicle. And this one display, whoops. Yes, this one display here, this indicates when he turns, the blue dot, and the red dot indicates him accelerating or decelerating the car. And this, oh, I'm sorry, I'm one video ahead. But what I thought was interesting with this one was showing that in the car actually is two people. There's a test driver who makes sure the car doesn't crash. And you can see him sitting here, and the wheel is turning on its own because James is controlling it. And here you can see an engineer with the laptop that's also aiding in the task. Okay, so in summary, from the science, humans can report their perceptions in these BMI studies. Movement plan activity is implicit or subconscious there, but layered on top of that appears to be a conscious perception of stimuli, in this case, somatosensory stimuli. And there's also a number of things that we've been able to decode from posterior parietal cortex. One of the more interesting ones we think is internal speech, which I think implies that it is also reaching the level of awareness. And then we also see social observation encoded in the mixed selectivity in this area. And then we can also have one demonstration, there are many, that of BMI control. In this case, we're able to control bimanually the three variables and also do it out in the real world. So all this other stuff is going on, but the subject can still have complete control of the vehicle. So I'd like, again, to thank our subjects that make this work possible, the funding agencies. We have a number of collaborators at Caltech that we work with. I'm out here because we're starting a collaboration with Nancy and Josh looking at intuitive physical engines within the posterior parietal cortex. And also, we collaborate with the medical schools and rehab centers in the LA area. So thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for the interesting talk. And I'm not an expert of brain and machine interface, so maybe live tracking is so stupid. But every time when I see the PCI work, then people just connect to the brain directly. But is there any way to connect with the like spine or that if they are applying bronchial or specific part, or still brain is better because of the resolution and
Yeah, right. Yeah, so when I started this work, so the question is, would it be better to just try to reconnect the spinal cord? And people work on that, on regeneration. There's a scar that forms, and it's very hard for neurons to regrow through the scar. And they've tried stem cells and a variety of other things. And I thought when I started this work, which actually was about 20 years ago with monkeys doing it, that we'd be out of business soon. But that work has, I mean, the stem cells tend to go everywhere, and it's very difficult to reconnect with specificity. So at least for now, our research is okay. Although ideally, that would be the best way to do it, if it's possible.
Just for clarification, my question is about like just recording the spine instead of the brain.
Yeah, you could do that. People work on recording from the cortex and stimulating the spine and producing a movement. So that's one approach that's being tried by other labs.
A couple of questions about the driving in general. Like, so is the output, what is the neural population output that is actually driving the car? Is it the AIP population or is it the MC? What's the...
Yeah, so it's both motor cortex and posterior parietal cortex. And the reason for that is actually just numbers. So we can get more neurons if we combine them.
So what's the total number that is basically driving this?
In this case, maybe 200. Yeah. And that's another thing that's amazing to me is that we can get so much for so little. We're going to be now looking to see if the bimanual control is coming from posterior parietal cortex, where we see essentially control of the whole body. Different effectors are coded by different neurons, or if it's coming from motor cortex as well. So that'll be interesting.
Richard, related to that previous question, so what is the signal that's being decoded? Is it an analog, is it graded signals, or is each control signal just a binary signal? And then how much retuning of the decoder needs to happen from hour to hour, day to day?
Oh, right, yeah. So we're recording spike counts, and each day we, for about 5 minutes, we recalibrate. And the reason for that is that you don't always get the same cell day to day on a particular electrode. So there's a recalibration period. The decoder, as well as training the decoder, but it's not a lot of time. Also, though, with James, and maybe for one or two of the videos I showed, we began to lose the fidelity of the recording. So the impedance goes down on these arrays. So at that point, we were getting a multi-unit activity and high gamma. And so we, being Zita Imami and her colleagues at Caltech, designed a single-layer convolutional neural network that then is the front end of extracting features from the signal and send those features to the decoder. So In that case, James was losing signal in the middle of this effort, but by implementing that, it really improves it greatly. So I'm becoming more of a believer, as I've talked to a couple of people today, in high gamma and local fields.
It's fascinating that this intention motor planning that happens before conscious awareness. Do you know if the PPC is the source of this planning signal before awareness, or they actually receive it from somewhere else, inherit this?
Oh, yeah, it's possible. So you're thinking that what we're recording in PPC is a result of one of these upstream areas that we have implants in. All of those look like they, in the sort of circuit-wide activation, behaved like PPC. So they were active for felt and for not felt. So I can't really rule out that they might have been contributing the activity. Can't say what if there's a single locus for that. These are a little like, though, experiments that were done in monkey by Ronaldo Romo. And he did these in monkeys, and the monkeys had to say when they felt something or not. And the results are not too dissimilar. Although he made the strong statement that S1 was not perceptual. And do you recall if, you seem to know the paper, if he might have been recording from area 3B, which is the primary input, whereas we're up in area 1.
Richard, so following up with the question of other ways to have someone self-do driving, that's a 3-axis, it's a pretty low dimensional signal, right? I mean, maybe there's comparisons if I actually, tetraplegics use like, tongue clenching, like where you could, all the head muscles are available. Those, A, are there devices for that, and B, can you outcompete those? But you don't have stability problems there. And I guess maybe question C is, as you get better, like more electrodes, you can imagine eventually you could get a higher bandwidth.
Yeah, right.
And you would overcome it. So those are sort of all interrelated questions. I wonder if you could speak to that.
Yeah. So this is the case, and actually for many of the BMI tasks people do, that the paralyzed people can do amazing things, like they can run wheelchairs, race around with SIP tubes and things. They can type and send text messages. But this somehow seems satisfying to them, that they can just, kind of think about it. And then conceivably, you could add those things. So this was, we just got a grant to extend this to actually put the subject in the car. So I think that they can go faster. And also, well, our sponsor wants us to add a lot of things, like I guess this car has 132 features you can control to be able to have the windows go down or lights come on and off and these things. But I wonder if a normal person also has a limited scope as a number of things they can control, so that usually when I'm in the car and I want to lower the window and I'm driving, it's not an easy thing. And I'm looking over and doing these sorts of things. But yeah, we are going to try to add more to it.
What are the key technical barriers to actually getting somebody able to drive an actual car?
Well, this is possible. Yeah. For
They're
this.
not doing it routinely, right? If they want to do it.
No. So Ford got a bunch of patents on this and then lost. I guess they do that, companies. And in some ways that's to block, like if Neuralink drives a Tesla. Then BlackRock bought a vehicle that can be, and had another company modify it. So we're going to use that vehicle now. So the other issues are IRB. He has to get a license to operate this particular vehicle as a van, so he can also be handicap accessible. There's liability issues. These sorts of things. But in the end, I guess potentially there could be a van going by when you're out in LA, driven by someone like this. I'm not sure what the limitations will be. Maybe I'm overhyping them.
Maybe let's take one more question and then we can continue the discussion.
Yeah.
You have this kind of more symbolic feedback of where the person is thinking to turn and how much to accelerate.
Yeah.
Did you try it without that, and does the performance like deteriorate if they're just getting visual feedback from the video feed?
Oh, yeah, good question. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we asked him, I asked him, which probably I'd go to one of my students and say, ask your question. I'll do that, actually, in a couple of days. Thanks. It's a good question.